And we're back. So, you guys are departing Kuma Village.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So, after probably what is the better part of... Yeah, the better part of probably 2 weeks... 2 weeks travel. You know, maybe a bit less than 2 weeks, maybe a week and a half. You arrive in Cheoun Town. Cheoun Town from the outside looks like a... It looks like it's seen the worst parts of a war. And over the last couple of probably months has been being rebuilt. It looks like, from the outside, it looks like it was once a walled town. But great parts of the wall have been damaged and destroyed. And many of the buildings look like they've been knocked to the ground and are in the process of being fairly hastily rebuilt. This is familiar to how you left it, Kelariis.
Yeah.
Although it is looking significantly rebuilt since the last time you were here. There's not nearly as many ruined buildings, and the streets look to have been mostly cleared of debris. And as you are sort of approaching it in the cart, Thesira goes from sort of excited to anxious to excited to nervous.
I guess, like, I kind of, like, put a hand on her shoulder and just reassure her as best I can.
Okay.
Yeah, like, is there something... not is there something, like, yeah, I guess, like, is there something worrying you about going back?
She just sort of... I guess she sort of tenses herself a little bit and just sort of says, I don't know, I left home thinking I was gonna do... Well, I guess, in truth, I left home because I wanted to be something more. I wanted to be like you. I wanted to do something great. I wanted to have what I thought was a better life, but I don't know. I guess I've realized that it's not all moments of heroism. And that's what people said to me when I left, and I didn't really believe it. And now I'm going back, and I don't know that very much has changed.
The thing is, did you leave for the heroism, or did you leave to do something?
No, you're right. Just because my idea of what it was going to be like was wrong, I still achieved something.
Exactly. And there are some things that you will never know until you leave what you've always been familiar with. And you've grown a lot since you left. There's nothing to be ashamed of for coming back, even if some of the things that people said that you thought were wrong ended up being right. There's nothing wrong with that.
She sort of swallows and just sort of turns and looks at you and says, "Thanks, I'm still proud of what I set out to do. And I'm gonna keep going for it."
You have every right to be proud, and I'm proud of you no matter what anybody else says.
She smiles sheepishly.
I give her a good proper grin. Like, you got this. It'll be okay.
Okay. So, as the cart pulls into the city walls, yeah, you are confronted with a fairly similar scene to what you see in front of you, with the exception that the figures in the streets are dragonborn and not humans. And the fact that many of the buildings are still sort of in states of repair, although the closer to the centre you get, the more intact the buildings seem to be. And people seem to be living fairly regular lives here. They definitely seem to have recovered from the difficulties that they had when you were here last.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks in no small part to your efforts. And as you go through the streets, you do notice that actually there are a lot of people who are stopping to look at you guys because you're strangers coming through, and then seeing you, Kelariis, and waving. Some people wave, some people sort of get excited and start talking to other people. People are recognizing you.
Yeah. I mean, like, I assume it's most of them are probably people that I know by name.
Like some of them are, others are people that you knew sort of just in passing.
Right.
Yeah, the town itself is not fantastically big, so you probably know quite a number of people here. But there are definitely some faces that you don't recognize, that are definitely new faces.
Mm-hmm.
But even some of these new faces seem to know roughly who you are.
Oh, jeez. I mean, like, I definitely... Anybody who says hi or, like, that I kind of recognize, I'd probably say hi to as we go.
Yeah. Well, as you're sort of going through the streets, like, you come up to a junction, and somebody runs up to the corner of the junction, and sort of waves to you. It's an older male dragonborn, and he sort of says, "Oh, Kelariis, you're here."
Is this somebody that I recognize?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
You recognize this as he's one of the village elders.
Okay.
He's I have his name somewhere. His name is Roke. I'll type that out for you. Yeah, so you recognize him. He's one of the guys that you sort of helped in the process of recovering this place.
Right.
and he's quite a well-respected member of the community.
Yeah. Hello, Roke. It's been a while.
It certainly has.
How have things been?
He smiles and sort of gestures around and sort of says, "Oh, we're doing magnificently. Thanks of course to you."
It's kind of like sheepishly.
Yeah.
Does like the head scratch, like, oh, that's awkward.
So what brings you to town?
Well, and I kind of like look to Thesira because
Thesira has been sort of like shrinking down behind you, trying desperately not to be spotted.
oh.
Yeah, Rook sort of sees and says, "Ah, young Thesira." And there's, I don't know, guess give me an insight check.
Okay.
Okay, there is the faintest hint of disappointment in his face.
Excuse me?
Yeah, with a 23 to insight, I guess, you know, like, Thesira had a very promising career in the village as, like, a functioning member of the community, rather than going off and being a soldier.
Yeah.
Well,
So it's kind of like, it's one of those things where, like, he knows that she left, and it was like, oh, it's kind of a shame on your family sort of thing, but then she's come back, and it's like, oh, this is kind of awkward.
God damn it. We're making a stop here on the way back up north. Saying hi and spending some time, maybe.
Ah, well, I'm sure there'll be plenty of people willing to greet you and ask you how your travels have been. You should stop by the tavern. We've finally finished.
Oh, that's great.
So we've made some changes that I think you might approve of.
Well, can my friends and I find room to stay there?
Of course, of course. I'm sure nobody would turn you and your friends down. Oh, I must go. I have things that I need to do before the day ends. But I will see you later.
Yes, it was very nice to see you.
Okay, and he heads off in the other direction.
I'll just sort of take the time to fill Raurai in, because this is a
Yep.
story we missed.
Yes, he has no idea.
Yeah, I fill him in on the details.
Well, how much details do you actually know?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, this is the thing. I think the details we know are basically Kelariis disobeyed military orders in order to stay behind and protect this town from something.
Yes.
So that's probably what Vondal would tell
Yeah.
Raurai.
Yeah. I mean, you're all in quite close proximity, so you can hear this.
Yeah. I think Kelariis forgot how awkward it is.
Yes.
To have, yeah.
Yeah. So I guess
Vondal will add, like, turning to Kelariis. Not that I say that in a criticizing way.
No.
It's a very noble thing you did.
I've had people criticize me for it. It's not something that I will ever say that I regret, so. But thank you.
Thesira sort of smiles and sort of says, well, none of this would be here if you hadn't done it, so... I guess you're headed for the tavern?
Yeah.
Okay. So as you are approaching the tavern, Thesira seems to be sort of keeping a lookout, like going through the streets, until you turn a corner around to where you know the tavern is, and Thesira stands up and says, "Oh, they finished it!" And as you turn around the corner, yes, they haven't. The construction of the tavern has been finished. It is now the beautiful two-story building that you never really saw what it originally looked like, but you could envision when they started rebuilding it, and it is now finished. But instead of the sign that you expect for the 7 platinum scales, the sign has been replaced with an artwork that proclaims the hero's hearth, and basically painted on the in sign is a beautifully detailed artwork of a bronze dragonborn sharpening their blade by a roaring fireplace.
Oh my god. Oh jeez.
It is the dragonborn in the image has some very similar features to somebody that you know.
Oh my god. Imagine Kelariis just turns even more red.
Yeah.
Yup.
If it's possible, she blushes.
Yup. No, this is definitely a.
Yeah. Oh god.
It's like a oh man. This isn't what I was expecting.
You left quite the mark on the place then. Let's see.
V is just super loud and just shouts, "Wow, that's you!"
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, see, that's me, I think.
Yeah.
I kind of look at Thesira and like, did you know that they were doing that?
She grins and nods.
Oh,
You didn't say anything.
how cute.
Actually, that's probably better that you didn't say anything. Oh. How long had they been planning that? The last I saw it was still going to be you just said the name of it and I
There's
thought it
it's
was-
seven scales.
Yeah, the 7 scales again.
She sort of smiles and just says, "Well, when you left, there was sort of a debate about what the best way to remember you was. Some people wanted a shrine, but they didn't think
Oh,
you'd want
jeez.
that, and so we settled for naming the inn instead."
Yeah, shrine would have been a bit uncomfortable. I'm extremely flattered. Yep, Kelariis is doing that really awkward like shuffle of like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't really know what to do because like that's extremely flattering, but also like, wow, that's a lot.
Yep. You are suddenly relating now to Jesmal more than ever.
Yup, that's a fucking goddamn. I guess unlike Jesmal though, I don't live in the city
Hmm.
that decided to, yeah. That's 1+. I guess let's shall we get rooms then?
So
They're
you
totally not gonna let us pay for it.
yeah you step inside and are greeted to rousing cheers. Dharma, the innkeeper, she is more than happy to give you rooms. She gives you the rooms on the top floor and refuses to let you pay for anything.
Oh,
And yeah, you are given a folk hero's welcome.
god damn it.
Almost as if you are a folk hero
Hmm.
of some description.
I wonder why you would say that. Oh. Yeah, I feel like Kelariis would do a lot of like back and forth, like, no, please let me pay.
Yep.
And she's like,
And-
"Nope."
No, nobody will let you.
Yeah, well, gonna make my effort.
But yeah, you are given a very nice set of rooms on the top floor that overlooks the rest of the city. And yeah, it's weird to be back.
Yeah. How is Thesira holding up? Cause
She's smiling and laughing, but you can tell there's sort of like there's a hesitance that she wants to go home, but it's like, I'm not quite ready yet.
okay. I mean, I guess like I'll introduce everybody to like
Mhm.
my friends and my companions. Because I feel like that would be extremely rude not to, and
Yes.
it takes some of the attention away from myself. So.
Yes. Yeah, so
For
you,
about 5 seconds.
yeah, you introduce all of your friends and companions to the members of the village or the town. And yeah, the people of Cheoun are very welcoming. It's almost odd. All of the other Dragonborn towns that you've been to, you've been paid very little mind. Generally, anyone that you weren't speaking to directly didn't really sort of pay very much attention to you, other than sort of like looking at you as you went past. But the people of Cheoun seem to sort of they are very welcoming. They're super friendly, and it's a very odd pitch shift from Dragonborn society as that you've seen it before, which was very sort of rigid. It definitely seems like people here have parted from the norms.
Yeah, I actually think that particularly when there's a quiet moment up in the rooms, at some point, Vondal will probably like go to Kelariis and be like, I hope you don't mind me asking this, but what exactly happened here?
Well, thanks, V. Um, well, it's, I mean, you've heard part of it. There was an attack made. Ferrous, I can't remember if we ever said for sure if it was the other, like the chromatic dragonborn, or if it was.
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Yes, because Cheoun is a casualty of the Civil War.
Right. Okay. I couldn't remember if we ever like said for sure. Okay. The war that I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but this is one of the places that was attacked, and when I was still a part of the army, my group was sent to help with rebuilding. But, well, as you know, they didn't stay, but I did. And I stayed for quite a while, and I guess I stayed when nobody else would.
You do know that, like, since you've entered, you've not seen a single sign of military presence in this whole town, despite it being a walled city that you would expect to be a key defensive location, which seems odd. I mean, Kelariis, you know the reasoning behind it, or the so-called reasoning behind it, but to the rest of you, it seems odd.
Yeah. Basically, the military abandoned this town, and that just wasn't right, so I stayed. And I did what I could to help them, and, well, they've come a long way from when I first got here, so.
Well, at least the city seems in decent shape. Well, mostly at least.
It was a lot worse. Like, a lot worse when I first got here, so. It's nice to see that things have been going smoothly even after I left.
Yeah. Okay. Well, at least they, yeah. At least they've made it without you. That would have been the worst if they had failed.
I mean, I did what I could to give them something as a foundation to keep going and keep doing things. So I'm glad that it worked out. I'm not exactly well versed in that front. Vondal probably would have done a much better job of setting up a town like this than I ever could. But
sometimes you don't need a proper coordination. You just need a figure to look up to. A little motivation to push you in the right direction.
Well, coordination is always helpful.
It is, but sometimes things can work well without it.
I mean, coordination basically left this town to their own devices to be picked off, so you know, we did what we could here.
Yeah. Oh well. Oh, guess it paid off.
It's good to see that even back then you'd happily help even the smallest of cases.
It's just like a kind of awkward but like grateful smile, I guess.
I apologize if I have probed too much. I simply wonder
No.
there's more to it than I assumed.
No, it's... I'd prefer you hear it from me than the others here, because they'll paint a brighter picture of me than I think that I deserve. And the truth is the truth. It is what it... I'm not ashamed of it. I'm glad that it all went the way it did. That things worked out, for the most part.
As further response to an earlier comment, I don't think necessarily that I would have done that much of a better job. See, I think ultimately that when we do things, we come out with the same result. We just find different ways of doing it. Whilst I take a step back and look over things carefully, you get your hands dirty, show people how it's done. You're a figurehead. I'm a planner. But it all works out in the end. Either way.
And that's the important thing.
Exactly. And you've certainly had quite the effect on them.
I think at this point, Thesira sort of stands up from where she's been sitting quietly for a good few minutes and just sort of says, I think there's some people I need to go and see.
Would you like any of us to come with you?
She nods.
Yeah.
Then we would happily accompany you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, first of all, she leads you out of the tavern, past all of the people who are still greeting and slapping you on the back. There seem to be more and more by the minute, so you're to the point where you're glad to get out of the tavern into the air. Thesira begins to lead you, Kelariis, not in the direction you actually expect her to lead you to start. To the point where she actually walks back around the back of a building that you yourself have not really spent a lot of time around, but it is the temple to the Platinum Dragon, which has been rebuilt. The shimmering metal dome that usually adorns the top of such temples is missing. Somewhat unsurprisingly, as you don't suspect they have the resources to rebuild it.
Right.
But the building has been restored. It was one of the buildings that the raiders took a particular amount of pleasure in torching. So to see it rebuilt it's a somewhat of an inspiring feat. But Thesira leads you around the outside of it and in through the side gate into the graveyard. And suddenly you realise where it is that she's going. Because this wasn't here the last time you were here, but it has now been added. But it is a headstone with an inscription that any of you who can read Draconic can read. And it is a memorial to Thesira's father. And she sort of stops in front of it, kneels down, and sort of quietly under her breath, you guys are fairly close so you can probably still hear it, just sort of says, "Well, Dad, I did say I'd come back. I haven't managed it yet, but I'm going to. I'm really sorry you can't be here." And I guess she just takes a moment. If anybody wants to say anything.
I don't think say anything, but like also like respectful head bow kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And give her a little bit of space.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I think after probably about a couple of minutes, she stands back up again and sort of, again under her breath, just sort of says, I'm gonna go see Mum now. I'll come back soon. She sort of turns and looks at all of you and says, "I'm sorry for making you wait. I needed to do this before I was ready."
No, of course.
You have no need to apologize.
To those of you with high passive insight, like, she is visibly upset, and like there's a part of her that probably is on the inside that is wanting to cry, but she chokes it back. And
I
yeah,
kind of like, not like give her a hug, but kind of like offer her that if she wants it, in the sense of like kind of angling
yeah,
my body slightly. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. If you do that, she steps up to you and sort of hugs you a little bit.
Yeah. I give her like a reassuring hug, like, yeah.
Yeah. And so, she leads you to a house that looks perfectly identical to when you left it, Kelariis.
Yeah.
It's a house you know well. Very small, very simple. And almost comfortingly humble. And she stands at the door for a moment before sort of psyching herself up. Thesira pushes open the door and steps inside. From looking at the outside, if you were all to go into the house, it's going to be very cramped in there, so...
Yeah, I'll probably wait outside.
Yeah. Yeah, same.
Okay. So I guess she steps inside, and Kelariis, I'm imagining you're sort of following shortly behind.
Yeah, unless she like made it clear that she wanted to go in alone.
No, she definitely wanted company, but it's just the fact that not all of you could fit in there.
Yeah, I got you. Okay, then yeah,
Um,
I'll go in with her.
Okay, so you duck inside. She steps through the short hallway into the room that you know that is the kitchen, and sort of sitting in a chair by the table that you've had many a meal at, sort of gently, very very carefully weaving a basket, like a small basket, is the woman you recognize as Thesira's mother. And as the door opens, she looks up. No words are sort of exchanged, and she just immediately just stands up from the table, walks over to Thesira, and just holds her. And she smiles, and like there is a thin tear that runs down her face, and she's just in Draconic just says, "I'm so glad you're home." And after a moment, she looks up, sees you, and sort of says, "Kelariis, thank you for bringing my daughter back to me."
I just kind of like smile and kind of like dip my head, like, yeah. Of course.
Thesira just sort of pulls away from the hug and sort of says, "So that's it? You're not angry at me?" At which point her mother just looks down at her and just says, "Never."
Wait a second.
It seems awfully familiar.
Yeah. Thesira, I asked you
Little-
if you did the same thing I did you not? God damn it. I could also be reading this very wrong, but like...
Yeah. She was definitely expecting hostility, but like... I guess like after a moment she sort of her mother just sort of like looks up at you and sort of says, when Thesira told me she was going to find you, I thought what she was attempting was foolish. Chasing a dream. And then I remembered that once too I was a little girl who wanted to chase a dream. And she, like, this is as much to Thesira as it is to you, and she says, we may not have... We may not have agreed on the terms of your departure, but I made peace with your leaving, and I am glad that you have returned. And yeah, the moment sort of stretches a little long, and you feel like this is the part where you kind of back out and make your leave and let her
Yup.
be.
Yup.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you-
just kind of like, it was very nice to see you again. I'll step out for now. Just kind of really awkwardly back
She
out.
smiles and says, "Don't be a stranger."
I'll do my best.
You step outside.
Yep.
You are all reunited.
Yeah, so...
Well, word's probably gonna spread fast that you've returned.
I mean, it seems like it already has.
Mm.
Even just with the short walk through town to get to the inn, or the tavern. But...
Is there anything else you wanted to do before we moved on?
Oh, I assume we're gonna at least stay here for a day, right?
Obviously.
Yeah.
We did rent rooms.
Yeah.
I'd imagine that Kelariis here has a story to be telling.
I mean, I'd like you all to fill in details as well. It's much better if it's not just me telling the story. V's particularly good at that.
V does tell a good story.
V is so ready to do another spiel about the guild. Look, it's like the idea has settled in her mind and she's excited.
God, I imagine
can't
she's
believe
been
that V
talking
is
about
the guild spokesperson.
honestly, she's not alone. Look,
I
Grim has
imagine
something
V
to advertise now.
Oh yeah. No, imagine V has been like talking about it the entire time we've been like traveling as well, like super excited.
Yep.
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 Meanwhile, Vondal
Very
is like, yes, glorious retirement.
Also, here it's like, oh yeah, like remember the Amber Eagle, which also includes your famous.
Graham.
Remember the name, the Amber Eagle, featuring such legendary members as Kelariis, Greysurge, and Thesira.
Basically.
Okay. So, I guess as you go back to the tavern, you tell a story, and people are amazed.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah. Hell
One
yeah.
hell of a story.
That's how it should be.
And I think after a while, Thesira and her mother join you in the tavern. In fact, by the time they join, it seems like the whole town is in here.
Oh Jesus.
And you definitely seem to be the talk of the town for, well, the whole evening, if not for longer. Eventually, sort of, things begin to die down, it becomes evening, and Thesira comes to you and sort of says that she's going to stay the night at home.
Yeah.
But her mother has something that she would like to give to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you make the short journey back to her house, and she invites you all inside. It's a bit of a squeeze. You manage to sort of all get in. And Kelariis, she takes you into the bedroom that they share, which you have distinct memories of this place because you essentially have a very vivid memory of being half unconscious from pain and in a state of delirium, and a tall man with long red hair standing in front of you and telling you the most incredible things you've ever heard.
Yup.
You
know, as you do.
Yeah. But she basically gives you a basically what is a like a handcrafted leather-bound pouch that burned into the leather surface you can see is the symbol of Tritherion. And inside it is a basically a small hand-bound book that as you open it up, it has good wishes and messages from all of the people of the town. And she sort of says, This we made in case you ever came back, to show you that everyone's life who you've changed here will never forget you. And you'll never forget us.
I don't think that I can express in words how much this means to me. I've always wondered, even after leaving, or hoped that you've all been well, that things have continued to go well, so thank you. This means so much.
It means so much to me that I know that you're out there and looking after my daughter. She already told me And this sort of like lowers her head a little, and she says, "She told me of the dangers that you've faced, and part of me wanted to tell her to leave it and come home, but I know she will not listen. She has her heart set on doing what you do."
Yeah, I may have played a role in her being that way. Maybe unintentionally, but no, I promise you I will keep her safe. She's very capable and she's brave in ways that I wasn't when I was her age. But I will always keep an eye on her. I will make sure that she comes back safe. And that she doesn't forget to write or visit.
She smiles. You have a good soul.
And so do you and all the others here. It's nice to come back and visit, even if it is a bit of a lot of attention.
I mean, can you blame them? Showing up out of the blue after all this time. After everything you did.
It was never just me, though. Everybody here did their part to rebuild.
But if it wasn't for what you did, making such a scene that day, the day that you turned aside the soldiers, we would have fallen apart and bickered ourselves into oblivion.
Kind of just do like the awkward, like, yeah, I guess, shrug.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to accept, like, yeah, I mean, I guess that's true, but...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that regardless of all of the things you did, the greatest thing you did was give this town a reason to hope. Something to believe in. Even if that was just ourselves.
I'm glad that that's how things ended up. I really am.
Well. Walk safe, Kelariis. And remember us.
I will. And all of you take care of yourselves as well.
Okay. And I think with that, we will draw a close to our session. Well. Somewhat more of a roleplay oriented session this session, but yeah, I feel like we've come to a satisfactory conclusion.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Is there anything anyone wants to share before we close out?
Well, it's gonna be exciting figuring out Guildhall stuff and all these people like praising Kelariis, of course. Let's hope it's not gonna be the kind of praise that leads to trouble.
Why would you say that?
Well, at least if we know that problems can happen, we'll be prepared. Maybe.
Maybe.
Hopefully.
Well, it's not like you've turned a Dragonborn settlement that was a key part of the Empire into a place that has shrugged off the caste system and totally just believes in their own independence now.
No, I totally didn't do that.
No.
It's fine.
Granted, that wasn't exactly the intention, it's just kind of how everything
Yeah.
ended up being.
Oh, let's hope that everybody agrees that nobody is very, very opposed. Well, to be fair, I don't think anyone that's opposed has enough strength to or power to do any harm. I guess we'll find out.
I guess we will.
Oh no.
So,
Oh no, this town.
well, you've certainly changed the life of a number of people this session. And I guess you guys can have some experience. So I guess, yeah, because we forgot at the start of the session to level everybody up, because everyone should have leveled up last session, but you can all level up for next session, and you can have an additional 1,000 experience.
Woo.
Lovely.
It's actually like a decent amount somehow.
And yeah, I guess with that, we will draw a conclusion to our session. So, thank you all for watching, thank you all for playing, and we'll see you guys next time.
Goodbye.
Bye.